It's Ken Barrett, Laundromat How To. Today we got a problem with the inverter on this washer. We had an alarm on the front. I believe it was an F13. Went through the steps, we shut the power off for about 5 minutes, powered back up. Checked in the back here for the code on the inverter to see if what it was there. It reset okay, but we still had an alarm on the front. So checked with a few guys, and that pretty much means you got a problem with the inverter. So we got one of these on order. Now the issue is actually changing it out. So looking at it here, got a couple of bolts on the inverter here and a couple back in there. I got a water valve out here too, so I got some extra hoses. But what I'm going to do is take this whole bracket off, just lift that whole piece right up, and then unbolt the inverter. So stay tuned and see what we can do. Okay, so we got the bolts off, pulled the top bracket off here, and then pulled the bolts out of the front, and we're able to tilt this back. First thing you want to do is just check your all the information on the top, check your model numbers, but even past that you want to check and make sure all your frequencies and input and output and all that stuff are all the same. Just double check, these things aren't cheap, so you want to make sure you're putting the right one back in. The next step when you got it this way is get the other one in here and switch the wires out one at a time, just so you can make sure everything gets back on the same terminals. As I mentioned before, I always take a picture of it before I start, and if you need to put additional tags on some of these wires, that never hurts either. Just you really want to make sure everything gets back to where it came from, so all your rotations are correct, all that stuff. But so far it's been pretty simple. Just unbolted that, we'll swap the wires out and get this unbolted out of this bracket. Alright, so I'm in here swapping the wires around, and I got deep down in here, and when I got onto the terminals I started finding that these ones down the bottom here are actually loose. So the top row is fine, but the bottom row is already loose. You can see it down there. But that terminal there, the wire is loose on it, so that could have been causing the problem. I'm at a point now where I've got the new part, so I'm going to swap it out, and I'll keep this one. Decide whether I want to send it out and get it tested. I mean, it is a pretty expensive part, so I can send it out if I can get it tested for 40 or 50 bucks and see if it works. That's great, but at the point now I don't want to just tighten it up, put it all back together, and find out it still doesn't work. So that's where we're at now. I'll keep going. Everything's bolted back in. We got all the wires in, got them all tight this time. When you put this back in, when you pull it out, you'll find out that there's a tie wrap on these wires. When you put it back in, you want to make sure you get them tied up, because this is going to sit quite a ways down in there. And right back here you've got your main pulley. You don't want to get those wires caught up in that, or even rubbing against them, or they'll eventually short out. Best case it trips a breaker, worst case you fry another inverter and you've got to buy another one. So just get those tie wrap back up, make sure they're nice and tight, and then once you get it in there you want to really look around to make sure nothing's down on that pulley back in there. So there we are, we got it all bolted back in. One thing I noticed when I put the tie wrap down in there, actually I tie wrapped one is up top, so it was a little too tight, and these wires here were pulling in, they were tight along the bottom of the bracket, right down in there. So you want to make sure they're not too tight, or if you're rubbing up against that bracket with the vibration of the washer, you'll eventually cut through, and again you can short it out. So just want to make sure there's enough room there, and then just reach down on this side and just check and make sure you've got clearance between that pulley and whatever wires are hanging down there. You can kind of get your fingers down in here and snug them up a little bit more if you need to. But so again, you want them tightened up, they're not going to rub into anything, but not too tight that they're going to rub up against the metal housing. So get the back cover back on this. Actually, I'll leave it off till I get it started, and then we'll go through and make sure everything works. This particular one, first I got to stop and put this the water valve back on. I'm going to take off. Actually swapped it with another machine while this one was down until we get the parts in. So all the parts are in, we'll get that up and running, and then we'll be back in action. Alright, so wrap this one up. We put the new inverter in, checked all the wiring, put it all in, made sure everything was good, and plugged it in, and it smoked out the side. Something internally shorted out on it. So I went back, took pictures of it, checked my pictures from the original connection, double checked all the connections, everything's wired to the same terminal that it was on the old ones, and so I'm not sure what's going on. So I put the old inverter back in, plugged it back in again, and we get the same F13 alarm we had to start with. So right now we're back to where we were. The old one's in, it's wired up, it's powered, but you know, it's not fried, there's no sparks flying in. So I'm gonna put all the videos together and all the pictures and lay the timeline and get the information back to the distributor and the supplier and just try and find out what was different and what caused that problem. We'll get it sent back to them and see if they can figure out what happened. So not quite a successful repair, but sometimes that happens. So it's, like I said, it's always good to take pictures before or after and as you're doing it, just so if you do run into a problem, you can go back and really look and see if it's something that you messed up or wired up, or at least that way you can show them, look, I did it all step by step and it just didn't work. So Ken Barrett, Laundromat How To. A really successful repair, but we'll stay updated and I'll give you some more details.